Wonderful. Hi there, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Leveraging AI in Pharma and Navigating the Regulatory Landscape and Use Cases. For those of you who haven't joined a Kneat webinar before or are new to our webinar platform, I am going to go cover a few of these housekeeping items. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that we have a chat box. You can choose the chat tab, the polling tab, or the Q&A tab. Feel free to chat with us live as we're doing this, and we'll be monitoring that chat. We'd love to hear where you're joining us from. Feel free to type those responses into the chat and let us know why you're here today. If you do have any questions for myself, by the way, my name is Madison Adams. I manage our events and partner marketing here at Kneat. Feel free to type those questions into the Q&A module tab at any time. That's a little bit different than the chat tab. You can also take a look out for the poll tab that will be going live soon, as we'll be asking an interactive poll during today's event before we get started. Now, that's a little bit about how to interact with us. You'll also be receiving a follow-up email with a copy of today's slides and a recording to the presentation after the webinar. You can always contact us whether you have questions or want to hear more, or if you want to schedule a one-on-one personalized demo, you can always contact us at info@kneat.com. And again, we're so thankful for you joining us here today, and we're looking forward to a great webinar. This is just a quick copyright disclaimer here for Kneat Solutions, and we'll move on to today's agenda. I'll start by talking a little bit about Kneat, and then passing it over to our experts today to cover the AI applications in the pharma industry and the regular impact on AI applications. And we'll be sure to leave some time for Q&A at the end. Now, I'd like to start off by welcoming our presenters today. Luca is PQE's Competence Center Lead in Advanced Technologies and will be delivering the presentation today. We are also joined by one of Kneat's senior process engineers, Amy Wilhite, who will provide some additional commentary on AI and digital validation in the current landscape. Welcome to you both. Before we get started, I do want to run a quick poll. I'm just going to open this. So just before we get started, to get a bit more understanding of where the audience is, where is your organization at with AI? Are you starting to think about it? Maybe you're not thinking about it at all. Are you about to launch your first project? Or maybe you're already utilizing AI in your day-to-day operations. I'll give that just a moment to fill in. Awesome. So I'll start sharing these results here. So it looks like, and I think this is, probably why you're tuning in today. It looks like a lot of people are kind of starting to think about how to leverage AI, and this is a great place to start. So thank you for your participation. Moving on to Kneat before our getting into the presentation today, we are a global organization that is headquartered in Ireland, but has operations and staff all across the world. I'm coming from you from Vancouver, BC today, and we've got Amy coming in from the RTP area in North Carolina, and Luca is joining us from Italy. Kneat has staff in France, Germany, Switzerland, Denmark, Canada, all over the globe. And I can see people participating in the chat. We've got people from all around the world joining us today. So truly a global event here today. Kneat is a publicly listed company on the Toronto Stock Exchange. And because of that, we're very held to a high governance standard. And that shows as all of our development is done in-house for maximum quality. We don't outsource any of our software development. We are ISO certified with those 2 certifications that you can see on the screen, and we are the validation platform of choice for 8 of the top 10 life science companies, including 3 of the 4 COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers. They are trusting Kneat for digital validation, and that's true for 40,000 plus users in the Kneat software as a service platform ecosystem. So what is Kneat Gx? Kneat Gx is the software as a service. It's a validation lifecycle management platform that digitizes validation from end to end, enabling regulated companies like pharmaceuticals to make validation easier, faster, and smarter. It works for any company across any industry that needs to validate their work processes, life sciences, fabrication, anything that has processes that needs to be validated, needs to be verified, and needs to be documented, and it all can be done with Kneat Gx. We are the leading digital provider of our product, and our product is one platform for any work process, whether that's CSV, process validation, or CQ, for example. Our solution eliminates 100% of paper from the validation lifecycle and is proven to reduce cycle time, skilled labor hours, validation costs, and increase right first time and speed to market. The platform is audit ready and enforces data integrity. And yeah, so with that, we're going to pass it over to you, Luca, and talk about leveraging AI in pharma. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'll start by introducing PQE. So we are a global service provider. We like to define as a global service provider with mixing the fact that we are a global company. We are based in 28 countries, but we are also used to follow pharma companies in sort of as your local company. And I work in the area of AI, as you introduced me, and in the validation of AI tools. So the presentation is divided in two parts. Obviously, in such a short time, we cannot explore all the, let's say, the applications of AI in the pharma industry in a high level of technical detail, in a very detailed manner. But we will try to have a broad overview in the first part with the definitions, which I think is always good to start from definition because not everyone has the same background, and you may have heard some definitions, let's say, on terminology misused in the past, and then we go through some example of where AI can be used in the pharma sector, and then the major focus, and I think the key aspect of this presentation is the second part, which is the regulatory impact on AI applications, which explores the two new regulations, so the EU AI Act and the US Executive Order about AI. And I think this probably will be one of the first time you will see presented in such a manner these two new regulations. So starting with the first part, a bit overview on the AI applications. I always like to start any presentation I do about AI with this slide because I think it's a very nice slide that shows the synergy between words and show the relationship between words. So it's as a glance, you have a clear understanding of where are certain terms in relationship to each other. Because often we hear speaking about AI, meaning deep learning, or the other way around. So artificial intelligence actually is a discipline that has developed since the 40s, 60s. So it's more than 70 years old as a discipline, even though there is a lot of emphasis about AI in the last 5 to 10 years. In AI, we have also classical AI methods, which are sort of methods that are nowadays, let's say, still used in certain contexts, but are not what we typically mean nowadays by AI. Machine learning is the broader set of tools and methodology and models that are used to learn. So here we start to touch the point of having algorithms that can learn from data and can get experience from data. And this is closer to what probably a lot of people have in mind nowadays for artificial intelligence. Deep learning is what has been developed in the, let's say, in the 10 years, and that really is transforming the landscape. Is a set of technologies using very large neural networks, and it's a discipline nowadays, we can say, by itself. And nowadays, I think, is the term that is the mostly confused with AI. So often nowadays, when we speak about AI, or at least some people intend deep learning. I put also some other terminology here that are partially overlapping with AI: data science, data analytics, and big data. So one interesting point I think is data science and big data. They are partially overlying because they are foundational to AI, to machine learning and deep learning. So you cannot have these without having proper data science and having these big data. In most of the cases, you cannot have AI models, machine learning models, deep learning models that are developed uh, without big data, even though that's not true for 100% of the cases. And you cannot have uh, this without having proper data science in place. Interesting enough, data analytics, that sometimes is one of those terms that is mixed in the middle of these, let's say, terms. It's not touching with AI, machine learning, and deep learning. So typically, data analytics is just a measurement of metrics and exploration of metrics, but is not related to machine learning and deep learning. So um, going to just defining now AI and machine learning, which I think are the two key differences. So AI typically is a computer science term that define uh, generically smart machines that are capable of performing some tasks that are typically done by human intelligence. So perception, reasoning, actions, and this could be linked to different type of data, so visual data, text, or and the particular success about AI lately is in the understanding of unstructured data, so text, images, and similar data. So broadly speaking, we can say that any system that has AI has some analytical capabilities that are somehow emulating human cognition. Um, Machine learning, it's an area where we are able to automatically detect patterns in data. So we explore data and we find a relationship in this data, and we use this data to either predict future behavior of this data, so try to do predictions, or doing classification of the data. And is an area where you can do take this decision based on under a certain uncertainty. So that's the power of machine learning, because it allows you to incorporate uncertainty in the picture. There are many methods that can be used. Maybe some of you have already heard about classification, clustering, regression, anomaly detection, or some of the possible methods, but there are so many. And typically we can distinguish between supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and some people also put reinforcement learning sometimes in the picture. Now, this in the pharma, it's typically linked to this is typically linked into context of industry 4.0, because industry 4.0 is a concept that has been introduced in the last 10, 15 years, let's say, and leverages a series of technologies, not only AI, but let's say the use of data, cloud technologies enables leverage, allows us to leverage basically through big data technologies such as AI, and then using AI to drive certain type of decision making. Uh, Linked to the second part of the presentation, I would like also to introduce a second concept, the concept of the Industry 5.0. And then later, when we will go in part two of the presentation, you will see why I stress this concept of Industry 5.0. This is a quite recent concept, which is complementing the definition of Industry 4.0, which is only a technological definition. Industry 5.0, instead of focusing only on technological aspects, tries to put the human at the center, so it's human centric. Industry 5.0 should be resilient and should be sustainable. So the shift focus by mere economic value to societal value of the industry and the benefit that the industry is bringing to the whole society. And this it's something that you will see is starting to be incorporated in regulations. So when these sort of concepts are starting to be incorporated in the regulations, everyone needs to start adopting these concepts. Speaking about some numbers, this is one of the typical examples of the explosion of data that we have in the pharma industry. It's just one of the potential use cases we have. So pharmacovigilance is something that is required by any regulated industry to monitor basically adverse event, and this is from the FDA basically. So it's just for the US. You see that in the last 20 years, so this is not even updated for the last 3 years, but we can expect this trend to even grow further. We start really to speak about big data even for data that are across industry on public databases, such as the one of the pharmacovigilance. So in order to leverage and extract information, manual processes are started to struggle to digest and ingest this amount of data. In this slide, I try to highlight some of the examples of typical applications in the life science industry, in a typical, let's say, pharma industry. So we go from, obviously, from R&D to manufacturing to supply chain to the commercial. So try to involve all four main steps of functions that you can have in a pharma industry. In R&D, the use of AI, it's I would say consolidated because it is applied with a bit less, let's say, constraint from a regulatory perspective. It's very useful because it allows you to explore new molecular design, allows you to do patient stratification, to find insight in the data. Can be used potentially also for target identification and validation. Manufacturing supply chain are area where good practices are more binding because we go in, let's say, more in industry standards. And here, AI, machine learning technologies are starting to appear more and more, especially in large companies. But let's say it's a process that is ongoing. In manufacturing, we have use cases such as quality control. Obviously, you have a lot of data. You want to control the quality of your batches, production batches, and you want to extrapolate information and to be proactive about the quality control, so doing prediction about that. There are use cases about automated batch release, and there is also some tentative about doing yielded output optimization. So try to improve the processes in the production of batches to find a sweet spot from a manufacturing point of view. So here again, you see the economic value is still predominant in the type of application. Supply chain, we have concepts such as demand and supplies planning, which is similar to quality control. In the end, you have, again, predictive capabilities that you use to optimize your flows. And from a point of view of commercial, we have I included also pharmacovigilance and the multiple use cases that you can have in pharmacovigilance using classification of the adverse event, classification of monitoring of comments online. And then you have also other areas such as using AI for incorporating feedback from the patient into the product iterations or some other possible use cases. But anyway, about maximizing the engagement of the audience. Now, this is another slide similar to the previous, where we try also to show for a specific application, such as the R&D, we show that there are different type of algorithms that can be applied to different type of problems. So, for instance, typical machine learning algorithms that are used in the case of regression, so doing predictions, are typically used for use cases such as forecasting or supply chain prediction, because obviously they are aimed at maximizing the output and the accuracy of the prediction you are doing. In case of classification algorithms, you go to typical use cases such as disease diagnosis or similar. In unsupervised learning, you have other possible use cases that are more related to data exploration, so such as patient clustering, customer segmentation, structure discovery, and data compression. Now, I close the let's say the first part of the presentation with this slide because I think it's showing a trend. Now, medical. This is the number of AI and machine learning enabled medical devices, so not related to the pharma industry because we don't have clear numbers about that. But we have clear numbers about medical devices, which is, let's say, another area of life science that is impacted by regulations in a similar field. Now, we see clearly that the trend is slightly reducing, even though we hear speaking about AI more and more. Now, I think this is due, and this is my personal perception, so my assumption, if you want, that regulatory clarity is somehow affecting GXP applications. Because if you don't have regulatory clarity, you will struggle in adopting AI and machine learning technologies for significant GXP use cases that have especially high or medium level impact. So I think there is a trend here. And I don't have data that are supporting my justification to this trend, but is, let's say, an incipit to the second part of the presentation. So the second part of the presentation is more focused about the regulations. I think we are at turning point because there are two very important regulations that were introduced in the last 6 months. Now, the first one is the EU AI Act that was reintroduced and approved basically 1 month ago. So you see on the 13th of March 2024, it was published on the official journal of the EU. What is this regulation? So the regulation, it's first of all, is a regulation, so it will be enforced, which is already an important point. It will establish a series of obligations for all providers and users, not just the pharma sector, but to all sectors. And this will depend on the AI risk level. And what is important to note is that every AI system in the market will need to be assessed. The EU AI Act introduces 4 levels of risks. Starting from the top, where you have unacceptable risk. So basically, the EU AI Act is going to forbid some practices to be carried out. And here we will have example. It's the classical example is the widespread biometric identification in public places. So using information to identify person without authorization, basically. So this will be forbidden, even though currently there are some systems that are doing this. At the second level of the pyramid, we have high risk applications. Now, probably the choice of color was not very happy, but if you can read here, we have medical devices, we will have products in general that have impact on society. So critical infrastructure, employment, law enforcement. I mean, the list is much longer than this in the annex of the EU AI Act is published completely. And basically here you will need to be in compliance with a set of mandatory requirements. At the bottom of the pyramid, we have, at limited risk, we have the typical chatbots application. So typical ChatGPT-like application. And at the bottom of the pyramid, we have other systems that are not falling in the previous categories. Now let's zoom a little bit on the AI practices on acceptable risk. Now, all this we say that they will be forbidden. I will go relatively quick on this slide, but let's say it will not be allowed anymore to exploit vulnerable people or groups. Experiments like social scoring and using AI for social scoring are forbidden in the EU. We said about a real-time identification system will be forbidden. Inference of emotions will be forbidden via biometric data. And the interesting point here is that this will be enforced through very high fees and on the companies that are not complying. So now this is this slide. It's updated to the last version. Is slightly different now. It's 35 million euros. But anyway, so it's either 35 million euros and or 77% of the annual turnover of a company, which is a very large number. So now let's go to systems that are closer to our application. So higher risk system, probably most of the application we will find applied to pharmaceutical sector or medical devices will fall in high risk systems or low risk probably. In terms, so this is the list of, first of all, of products or part of products that are impacted, let's say, by the this high risk category. And what I think is the main novelty of the EU AI Act is the establishment of a high risk compliance framework for AI systems that are in the high risk category. So there is a list of requirements that all these AI system will need to have. So you will need to have a risk management system in place. You will need to have data and digital governance in place. You will need to have a set of technical documentation that are justifying the training and how the algorithm was trained and the testing of the algorithm that was done. Accuracy, robustness, cybersecurity, transparency information about the model, what are the mechanisms for human oversight, for instance, if there is a level of control on top of the system, and then also record keeping, which is not just about the output produced by the system, but also about the data that are used for training the system, for instance. Interestingly enough, is introduce also the concept of a conformity assessment procedure. So all these requirements will be used to create a conformity assessment procedure, which for people that come from a regulated area sounds very familiar. All this concept. There is also the concept of registrate on the EU database. So there will be an EU database created for all the AI systems. And finally, you will get an EU declaration of conformity once you pass all these steps. After the system is released, there will need to be in place a post-market monitoring strategy, which also needs to be established and will need to be detailed. So using appropriate metrics will need to be documented and will need to be linked to the quality management system of the company. So here, for instance, we have a slide that is slightly zooming, let's say, on type of medical devices that are in the list of impacted in high risk. So drug delivery devices, medical robots, diagnostic imaging devices, equipment maintenance, and so on. Uh, so in terms of limited risk, instead we have general purpose AI and generative AI here. So in this case, the requirements, of course, are a bit lower. So typically here, users must be aware of the fact they are interacting with the AI. So in this case, you cannot use chatbot for interacting with the users if they are not aware of it. So there needs to be consent prior to processing the biometric data. Be aware that some data are generated by or manipulated by AI. So trust in the data that are created by the AI. And similar, so also for generative AI about establishing safeguards against the generation of illegal content. Now, this is a zoom of the EU AI Act. For the executive order, we have seen basically the EU AI Act established a risk-based framework. The executive order was introduced just a few months before the EU AI Act in October 2023, and there are some implementation documents that followed very recently. Now, first of all, is an executive order, so it's not a regulatory document. So that's a first big difference. And but basically, what does the regulatory document does? It's a call for action for all the federal agency of the government of the USA, and it's also a mandate for large AI developers for basically ensure safety and security, let's say, of information. So the approach we will see is slightly different now. The focus of the AUI Act probably is more on the safety and of the citizen and on the society as a whole, let's say, but the citizen is at the center, I would say. Here in the executive order, probably we see more at the center the prosperity of the economy and the safety from security from a point of view of nation, I would say. At the center of the document. So these are the 8 principles that are underpinning this document. So supporting American workers from a point of view of economics, let's say, advance equity, civil rights, protect the interests of American users, advance privacy and civil liberties, establish the risk management in the federal government, and of course, safe and secure, and the fact that the US has to lead the technological progress. I included the definition of AI systems for the executive order because they are slightly different than what are the, let's say, academic definitions. So for the executive order, an AI is a machine-based system that can, for a given set human-defined objectives, make prediction, recommendation, or decisions, influencing real or virtual environments. Whilst an AI system is any system that uses in whole or in part an AI system, an AI technology, sorry. There is a series of constraints, let's say, that are included for specific systems. So systems that are dual use foundation models, so what are called foundation models that are basically trained on data and that are used to have tens of billions of parameters that are applicable on several domains. So means models, for instance, as ChatGPT, just to make always the same example, but because it's really is applied to in a very large domain, in very multiple domains, they will need to disclose informations about the technology they are using and in the let's say the what is underlying the training operations that were used, what type of data were used, and the technology that were used. Also, models that generically are considered large, So large by definition of these 10 to the power of 26 flops, which is larger than ChatGPT 4, for instance, or large clusters, they will need to disclose information. So always seen in a sort of security perspective. The executive order is very much linked to the NIST AI risk management framework, which is a document that introduced in 2023 a series of requirements that the AI systems need to have, and they identified basically the risks. Of course, the framework is a risk management framework, so it's about measuring, managing certain risks, about govern other risks that cannot be measured or managed, and also about mapping risks. The AI risk management framework also introduced the concept of trustworthy systems. So there is a series of concepts that are introduced. So an AI system needs to be safe, secure, and resilient, explainable and interpretable, privacy enhanced, fair, and accountable and transparent. Now, this poses a little bit of a problem because I think there is no wide consensus yet on certain of these items. So that's probably still an issue that is open to be solved, because explainable and interpretable, if I take one, for instance, it's a definition that can be stopped at multiple levels. Let's say how much I understand and how much I can explain the decision of an AI-based system. It's not always so straightforward. There is emphasis on generically on the human oversight also here of AI system, and the fact that information needs to be communicated in a user-friendly format. So this, in the end, inherently increases the transparency of the algorithms. Now, interestingly enough, there were two guidelines that were introduced recently, 1 month ago, that probably are somehow linked to the EU AI Act, were introduced in the US. Probably they have they have read the EU AI Act. So there are some concepts that were introduced that are similar. So these are guidelines for the implementation of the executive order. And these guidelines explain in practice how you can implement the executive order. There is the concept of rights impact AI, a safety impact AI. So AI that is impacting the rights of persons and the safety of persons, basically, of human beings. Actions and strategies are divided in 3 different areas. Strengthening the AI governance as a whole, so in an organization having AI governance strategy enforced, advancing the AI responsible innovation, and managing the risks from the use of AI. Now, this slide summarizes what are the minimum practices that needs to be enforced on a system when you have AI. So you need to have an AI impact assessment, clearly explaining what is the intended purpose and benefit, what are the potential risks of this AI technology, and what are the measures and, let's say, metrics that are used to measure data quality and explain and the relevance of the data that are used. There needs to be some testing done in real-world conditions, which is also an interesting point because that's not always easy to do. And independent evaluation of AI. So there needs to be some sort of independent control in terms of boards or ethical committee or some mechanism within a company that must review the documentation. Now, bear in mind that this is done for the agencies of the US government, but for sure it will influence the economic world as well. after the system go live, there will need to be an ongoing monitoring, a continual risk evaluation, mitigation of emerging risk. Now, everything linked basically to the quality management system in place for the AI algorithm. These concepts, again, are similar to what we explored during the UA Act, and are similar to the typical quality management system um, items that you have for a traditional system. For a traditional system. On top of this, for rights impact AI, you have some additional practices. So rights impact AI, for instance, are algorithms that are impacting bias on people based on race, gender, for instance. That could be two examples. You need to identify and assess impact on fairness and equity, which is not always very easy to do in data sets. You need to mitigate algorithmic discrimination. So that's also an interesting point because you are required to do this by law. And you need to include feedback from affected communities and public. After the system go live, you need to have some other mechanism established for the mitigation of AI risk and also to incorporate the notification of negatively affected individuals. So I think this is a mechanism that is somehow similar to the one you have in place for complaints for any product, or for instance that you have in place for pharmacovigilance. Now, to summarize basically everything, the EU AI Act and the comparison between the EU AI Act and the executive order, we said one is a legislative act and one is an executive act, so there are differences from a regulatory perspective. One is focusing on all AI systems, while the executive order is focusing on very large models. And but now with the guidelines, this was slightly addressed because now they introduced also in the executive order the concept of intended use. So if there is a rights or safety impact, they need to be addressed. The system is in scope, as I said, that they are all for the UA Act, whilst government agency for the executive order. And the approach is slightly different because it's purely risk-based for the UA Act, and for the executive order, we have this underpinning principle. Now, the impact of the EU AI Act in Europe will be very large. There will be a time because it will take 2 years to be fully enforced, and companies have up to 4 years for certain products, even a high risk, to comply with the EU AI Act. So there will be, of course, a transitory period, but it will have a strong impact for sure. I assume that also the executive order will have an impact as well, because I think we are going in the direction to have clarity from a regulatory perspective, and this was the first attempt, and is for sure is impacting directly the industry in terms of transparency. The focus, as I said, is more on risk, minimization of risk on the UI Act, and banning certain practices, while on the executive order is more on the defense and security. But there are similarities. So there are concerns with the deepfakes phenomena, with AI-generated content, concern with AI bias and discrimination, protection of rights, and protection of privacy. So in conclusion, we can say that the UAI Act for sure is a crucial milestone because will change the future of AI, of the AI landscape beyond the pharma industry, The executive order follows a similar approach, and we also see that there will be the introduction of a risk-based approach also to all AI systems, not limited to the life science industry. And I think the last bullet point, as a answer to the question that I posed myself before, I think the regulatory clarity, these are the first clear regulations, I think, that were introduced in the last 3-4 years, will further boost the innovation. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Before we jump into questions, I don't know, Amy, if you had any comments on the presentation at all and how it relates to digital validation or what you've been seeing at Kneat.
Sure. So there are a few things that we're preparing for as far as what we're expecting to come pretty quickly with AI and how it's expected to work with um, digital platforms like ours, especially with regards to documentation of the validation activities. So I just have a few things that we are potentially going to start seeing soon, where the Kneat platform is opened up to be API compatible so that we can prepare for these integrations that are potentially coming with the various existing AI programs that are already in the market that we've actually seen people start to use already. So some of those are going to be things like requirements generation. So user requirements, design specifications, functional specifications. Those things we're finding there are programs that already exist where people can feed the program things like user manuals, the material certifications, and things like that, and have the system generate like a user requirement for them. So we would definitely want to integrate and have that availability to just pull that straight into the Kneat platform so that folks can be using that in their documentation lifecycle for the validation. Additional examples would be things like test case generation. We know of people who are actively doing test case generation where you can feed an existing program some of your example test cases and your system specifications, and it'll spit out test cases that you'll actually want to use to test your systems. So one of the perks to having all of your information in a digital platform like Kneat to begin with is that it would be really easy to use all of the information that you have in Kneat as your training data for those AI systems, because you could easily export the information from Kneat, or you could just have the interface that allows that system to read that, to just have that huge amount of training data already available. And so we would want to interface with those systems as well, so we could pull those, automatically generated requirements and those automatically generated test cases and allow the system to read those, pull those, report on those, and then just execute those digitally for the user. So we're definitely expecting a lot of those things to be coming pretty soon. There's even some potential rumors that we're hearing about AI that can assess your risks for you, identifying your potential risks, and even allowing you to, have proactive risk mitigation based on what it finds. Any of the automated systems that are doing automated testing can have AI do that for them to reduce the manual labor that's involved in that. Having your traceability matrix generate automatically by linking those requirements in those test cases is something that Kneat already does automatically, but having that as something that people are looking for from AI is going to be awesome, because we can definitely have those things provided. And then continuous validation is also something that we're going to be seeing with AI pretty soon, where the systems are going to be kind of notified by AI that these things are going to require continuous validation to make sure that they remain in a validated state, so the AI will know what's coming, what needs to be happening, and analyze exactly the patterns and the trends that it's seeing in those continuous validation efforts to provide uh, issues that need to be resolved, and kind of predict what those could be in the future. So predictive maintenance and things like that. So we're open. We're already open. Our API is already open. So we're gonna hopefully start seeing those integrations come through in our active projects really soon, and be able to get a bunch of examples and use cases and active use of AI as a standard in the industry.
Awesome. Thank you. Before we jump into questions, and thank you, Luca, very much for that presentation, I just want to draw your attention to the screen as we are actually just over 2 weeks away from Validate, which is Kneat's digital validation conference experience taking place in Berlin on the 15th and 16th of May. There's actually going to be a panel looking at validation 4.0 specifically, and I know they're covering some AI topics within that as well. So, the conference is something you definitely don't want to miss out on. Registration is closing soon, so get your tickets before it's too late. We also have some additional webinars coming up next month. The first looking at electronic batch records on May 9th. And then at the end of May, we'll be hosting our monthly demo webinar showcasing the Kneat Gx solution. All right, let's move on to some questions here. The very first one I see is if you could confirm the executive order you were referencing between it being 14.110 or 14.1110. Oh, I think. Are you muted? Amy, were you able to hear Luca's answer?
No, I think he might be muted somehow.
Okay.
I don't see him in the speaker field anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think he's physically muted. I think somehow he's just out of the speaker field.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm seeing the same thing. Because it's not showing muted.
What about now?
Yes,
Can you hear
you're
me?
good. Yes.
I changed the microphone. I don't know. Maybe
No problem.
anyway, I was saying that the executive order is 14.110, so 14,110. Probably there was a typo. I noticed during the presentation that there was a typo, but I glazed. And so yeah, that's the one, and it's is the one basically if you Google executive order on AI, 23rd October 2023. It's there is a nice summary on the website of the White House.
Perfect. Thank you. Have you seen any examples of successful use cases where AI has been leveraged already to help with some of these regulatory challenges? Yeah.
Yes, so well, of course, not yet with these regulations in place,
Sure.
but in the past, let's say we have seen more than one, let's say, use case using AI. I would say mostly what I defined at the beginning, so machine learning applications. So examples we found was the validation, for instance, of a laboratory system that was using AI algorithms for anomaly detection, basically. So for excluding basically measures and before the system would go out of specification. So in the end, saving money to the company. We have seen examples of simplified batch release, we can say, in manufacturing. So using again machine learning models for simplifying the process of batch release. We have seen also examples in the area of pharmacovigilance, even though I think that's a difficult part because there you cannot use easily machine learning algorithms, which are a bit easier to validate, even though complex, but still difficult, I would say. But probably there you need to go to use deep learning, so large language models for ingesting data, text, basically, narrative of case histories. So you need to ingest a lot of data, and this type of algorithms in a regulated can be technically doable, obviously, but being reliable to the standard we want algorithms to be reliable, it's a journey to get there and to have practices, good practices established to reassure us that they are performing up to the standards. But yes, we did also that, basically.
Awesome.
So
Thank you.
those are three different examples, very different from one another.
Yeah, very, very unique. With, obviously rapid advancement in AI technology, you referenced the standard that you mentioned earlier that just came out, or sorry, executive order, or no, what did you call it? Sorry, I said the wrong.
EU AI Act and executive order.
Exactly. Okay, thank you. Obviously, there's these rapid technologies in AI. Do you foresee regulatory bodies adapting their guidelines and frameworks to like keep pace with the innovations, or how do you see that happening?
Well, they are trying to catch up, basically.
Yeah.
The technological advance is very quick, so the pace is very fast.
Mhm.
But I think, yes, the point is provide some clarity, because regulations are there also to protect us, but also to provide clarity to the providers and the users. And having regulations clear can also stem new areas, let's say. And because I think we are reaching a point where we have a lot of emphasis on AI, but we are starting
Mhm.
to, due to the fact that there are some consequences of, let's say, of the failure of AI algorithms that are not clear, who's the owner of those consequences. Regulations can definitely help, because technology in that
Yeah.
sense cannot help. So technology is
Yeah.
there, but needs to be regulated.
Perfect. The last question I see here before we'll wrap up, just be mindful of time, is could you not use knowledge maps instead for the use case on the pharmacovigilance?
um, uh, for for the use case of, you mean, yeah, well, the use cases in pharmacovigilance are multiple, first of all, because in
Okay.
pharmacovigilance there are multiple use cases that can leverage AI. One example is classification of adverse event. Probably that's the most high impact use case you may have.
Mhm.
Of course, in the end, I mean, if we speak about the knowledge maps, for instance, I would go back to the fact that we go back to certain type of methodologies that are closer to what is the original definition of AI, so sort of expert systems and AI as it was defined in the 60s and the 70s. So uh, the answer will be yes, and I would still argue that that's an AI methodology, even though not in the way we define it nowadays, because basically we are trying to map logics and automate reasoning in a certain way. So just this is an academic reply more than a practical answer, but I could say that we are still in the same area. But there are other areas also in the pharmacovigilance use case. For instance, there is the automated screening of comments online. So pharma companies, they have to monitor comments on Facebook, on Instagram, for instance. That's a very tedious task to be done by humans, and probably not as high impact as the one I was mentioning before about the adverse events, because in the end we are mitigating the risks in some other way. So here I think AI, in the sense of, like, for instance, large language models, can help somehow
Mhm.
improving the human performance, because in the end we want to have systems that perform better than humans.
Yeah, good point.
That's
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Luca, for your presentation, and Amy for your comments, audience members, and everyone else that made this webinar possible today. A quick reminder that it was recorded, and you will get a copy of the slides in the recording later this week. I hope everyone has a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you on the next Kneat webinar. Thanks again, Luca.
Thank you.